All right, BookShark Boot Camp. It is your community manager, Jana, and this is session 6. We are live on this Wednesday, August 7th. Hope you are all doing well. For any of those on the East Coast, like myself, hopefully you are surviving. Debbie, she has definitely been adding some complications to doing day to day in our new place in North Carolina. So hopefully you all are staying safe and you are getting in the swing of things, all things homeschool, and hopefully enjoying your BookShark. Whether you are just getting organized, watching these videos, and getting a good idea of what your year is going to be, or if you've already started BookShark and you're watching these videos to make sure that you are on track and doing things the most efficient way. Again, these are suggestions. I've been doing this, I've been using BookShark for 8 years. I'm going to be doing it my 9th year this year with my youngest. But I know that, innovation is a word that we all hear and it's something that we can all implement. So while we have these tips and tricks, I really want to hear from you guys. What have you implemented that has worked well? What have you decided that it will, you've had to tweak of the things that we've shared here in the last 5 sessions? This is session 6. We're going to be talking about staying organized throughout the year. But I really want to get a conversation going with you guys. What is working well? What do you feel like does need to be tweaked for you individually? There's so many different reasons why we homeschool. There's so many different varieties of how to homeschool. And so our boot camp is here to just give you guys a jumping off place, a place that like you can get your feet on solid ground. You can get organized with your curriculum. You can know what your year is going to look like, what your days could look like. And then you kind of just get to be set free. You get to do it. You get to play around with the scheduling. You get to play around with the books and the subjects and see what really works for your family. So I am going to talk about staying organized throughout the year for this year. But of the past 5 sessions, I'm really excited to hear what is working well, or what are you excited about, what you think you're going to be able to implement and feel like it's going to work well for your family. Then we're going to do a check-in and see what are the things that you were like super stoked about and then realized you totally had to change because that was not going to work. The thing about homeschool is that it is a journey. And like any journey, you have road blocks, you have detours, you have daily challenges. And so I want to encourage you guys that it's not going to be perfect. Your first day, your first week, your first year, nothing in homeschool, nothing in life is perfect. And I want to keep that same attitude in our homeschool. Be prepared to receive and give a lot of grace to yourself and to your children. Remembering why you're doing this so that when you do hit those road bumps, those detours, you don't have to fall apart. You don't have to feel like you made a horrible decision and you're regretting life choices. You can just take a deep breath and recognize what it is. It are things that are out of your control, things that that you didn't necessarily prepare for, but that you are a competent parent and a homeschooler who has the resources that you need to keep going forward. And that's what boot camp is really all about. So let's talk about how you can stay organized throughout your year. We did talk about our working binder. Let me grab that for us. Sorry, I had to lean down here. Working binders are when you take out a couple weeks and you put them into a thinner binder from your big BookShark binder. Several reasons we suggest that you do this. That file binder that BookShark gives you is ginormous. We understand that. But it's the only way that you can keep all 36 weeks together, keep organized in a larger scale. Then we suggest taking out, if you're doing more than one level, maybe just 2 weeks at a time and putting them in your working binder. If you're doing one level, you could maybe do 3 to 4 weeks at a time. That way, when something comes up and you need to run out of the house, maybe it's an unexpected appointment, maybe it is an unexpected road trip, you can grab what you need and go without having to grab the file binder, which if any of you have experienced this, that sometimes those rings can come apart And if they're getting jostled a whole lot, so we have them in our moving pods when we do our conventions, and we actually have to solder them together because otherwise, in all the hustle and bustle and moving, those rings can only handle so much. So that's why we really encourage you guys to have the working binder. It's easy, you can grab it. You're not going to lose 36 weeks of pages if somebody accidentally bumps it and it comes open. It's just very practical. If it's a great day and maybe you don't have a tropical storm coming your way or in the midst of it, you can take your working binder, put it in a book bag, and go to the park or your library if you need to get out because you're kind of feeling like the four walls are closing in. So many reasons why a working binder is a good idea. Now, you could have more than one working binder. That's totally up to you. We suggest doing these clear fronts and then slipping in your IG. So your IG cover is going to say the level and then the subject. And I don't have one here in front of me, otherwise I would show you, but hopefully you guys all know what I'm talking about. When you opened up your IGs, it would have that cover. You could slip it in the front, you could slip it in the back. Maybe if you're doing two levels, two different ones, you can have one for each level, but it's just easy to grab. It's just more practical in the day to day. So that is your working binder. We talked about that a couple sessions back. Place your calendar in the front if you have not already done so. You're going to be placing your maps. Ooh, again, sorry, let me reach down here. We have these maps that are laminated in levels A through H. When you get to level I, that's more of a middle school, high school, you're not going to have laminated maps anymore. You're going to have a parent guide and a student guide. The parent guide will have paper maps with the answer key, and the student guide will have their paper maps in section 3 that they will be working through the year. So that is just something to keep in mind. If you are working at a level I or higher, you're not going to have laminated maps anymore, and you're going to find those paper maps in section 3 of both the parent guide and the student guide. So just a little tidbit on that. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, just a refresher about your working binder. Next thing I want to talk about is your student binder. So this is, it can be the same size. It can be maybe a little bit thicker. It's a place where you're going to put everything that they have done from BookShark into. So it's going to be their activity sheets. Anything that they work on for their math, if it is a loose leaf or you want to pull it out, it's a great idea to have a 3-hole punch so that you can, if it doesn't already have holes in it to put in a binder, you can then put it in. And the reason that works well is that this is going to just, each week, you're going to just keep putting them in layer by layer, either, putting them at the back so it actually goes chronologically, week 1 through 36. That probably makes the most sense. But you want to make sure that you have your students' work in one place for a couple of reasons. It's just a way to be organized, so you don't have loose papers everywhere. So you're not like, what did you have to go back to week 3 to look at when you're on maybe week 5, especially if you're in the upper levels and you're doing a research paper and it's going to take a couple weeks to get through, or if you're in your history and you want to flip back to something, the only history sheets that you will have is if you're doing a level F, ancient or Eastern Hemisphere. All of our rest of our history is going to be the Socratic method discussion and having discussions with your kids. But maybe you have your kids write sentences with the vocabulary words. Maybe you are, if you're using virtual, that's going to actually keep all of your records, assessments in one place that you can print out at the end and make their own portfolio. But if you're doing the traditional paper instructor's guide, paper IGs, you're going to have activity sheets from, if you're using our language arts, if you're using our science, and then if you're using history F, you'll have some paper as well. So I just want to encourage you that it's a great place just to stay organized with your kids' work. If you were to ever need to prove what you have done in your homeschool, every state is different. Every program, if you're under an umbrella, is different. But it is good to have on hand that if someone was like, hey, I need to see what you've been working on, you'd be able to show them. You'd be able to prove that you are actually homeschooling. Here is the proof of what you have been doing, both your IG with your notes and then your student binder. Let your kids decorate it. When I was a kid, we had those Trapper Keepers, and I actually saw they were back in style. I think they were only a blip. But if you have those clear fronts, give them some construction paper. Let them make it their own so that they know either at the end of the day or at the end of the week, if you're using like baskets in your homeschool area, you're going to take those papers and you're going to put them in the binder, and they are secure now and they are finished maybe after you score them, depending on how you set up your homeschool. It's just a great way. So you have your file binder, you have your working binder, and then you have your student binder. That is, it's just a way, one way. If you have a better way, maybe you're going to scan your pages in. Like I said, if you're using virtual, you really are going to have it all set for you on that online platform, so you don't even have to worry about this portion. But again, I'm going to really be excited to hear how people are tweaking this and making it their own. How are they going to make this work for them? I want to talk about part of staying organized throughout the year is getting yourself familiar with the program and the material. So we talked about in session 2 when we were doing the working, when we were putting together the binder, that you were going to go back and look through sections 1, 3, and 4 after you had gone and done a couple weeks of BookShark, so that you had some familiarity with the terms, with the references. Really want to encourage you guys to do that. Set yourself up for success by being organized and understanding what it is that you are using, what is at your fingertips. BookShark on the surface is phenomenal, but if you get really into it and understand the nuances of the program, it can really explode for you and your kids. So I just want to throw that out there. The first couple of years, I followed the schedule, but I will say I really didn't get into my instructor's guide. And I feel like once I did, it was a beautiful explosion of learning that we just hadn't had in the beginning. That being said, those first couple years, I was doing what I could, and it was still a great time in learning. But it's like anything, once you get familiar with it, once you understand how it works, how the pieces work together, think about if you're cooking or if you're putting together a project, like you can do the bare minimum and it is sufficient. But when you understand it and get comfortable with it and really start getting into the flow of how the program works, it really does add another piece to your education. So I'm excited for you guys. I really want to encourage you to go back and read those sections and see, now that you understand what's going on with the program, what's clicking for you, what's making sense, kind of like that. Yeah, now I get it. Now I understand the mapping points. Now I understand the timeline. The timeline was something that we did not utilize in the beginning of our homeschool, and this one happens to be blank, so I can't show you a completed one. But these different figures, I have Eastern Hemisphere F. So I wish we had done it from the beginning, but we didn't, but that's okay. Want to encourage you that as you get your timeline figures, this is another way to stay organized. We talked about the color system for the different levels. It is a really good idea as you're going through these timeline figures to maybe highlight the name or the date in the color of the level that you're using as a way to stay organized even in your timeline, so that as you go back and you review and you add things in as you level up, you'll be able to kind of go, oh, that's right. Remember in level F, we talked about that particular person, let's say Mother Teresa, when she was in India in the time that she was there, right? So if you highlight either the title or the date in the color that your figures come in for your level, it helps keep your timeline organized, so that when you guys go back, and you'll see if you start in A and go all the way through, or even if you start in D and just do a couple of years, you really see how it all starts to piece together, how history does come alive and how things are connected to each other. So obviously, as you level up, you get deeper into more of the why of history instead of just the what of history. And then you can start to tie those memories back together and say, oh, we learned about that particular date and event back in this level, and you have that color coded so you know what level it is, and maybe you can tie the books that you read to it and really jog their memory. Now you're going to be able to add in that deeper portion by saying, okay, now that you have the maturity and this background, we can talk about the why. Why did that happen? What were the implications? And how did that affect things going forward? And when you open up that timeline, you can really make those connections. And so I know I'm geeking out, and it's probably because I didn't do it from the beginning. So I really want to make sure that you guys utilize that, in your time. And if you don't have time to do it, let's say, you're just like, I feel overwhelmed, I'm doing the best I can, then put it in your calendar as a review, maybe on your extra day, maybe once a week or once a month. You go back and you look at the timeline figures, and that's when you sit down and have your kids color and then recall either the story that you had read around that figure, maybe some facts that they recalled, maybe you find a YouTube video to kind of jog their memory. But there's so many ways that you can use it. Just don't ignore it, because it really does help bring some solid connection to what you're learning about in history. Okay, enough about that. Now, another great way to stay organized is to plan, right? Plan. We have done all of the school planning for you. Your curriculum is what we call fully planned. But what you can do is take time. If you are going to school Monday through Thursday, or Monday through Friday, and have a day off in the middle of the week, or however you're choosing to do this, I'm just going to say Sunday night because that's probably the most general I could go. Sunday night, take your working binder. I would really encourage you, take that time as like your teacher planning time. I don't know if you've ever been around teachers, if you have friends, if you are one yourself, if you've been in the education world, teachers have times where they get to plan for the upcoming quarter, week, sometimes daily. We encourage you to make sure that you set aside time to look over the week so that you are not shocked by something that is going to come up. History can be very messy. If you're using our Reading with History, we really try to keep things age appropriate but real. Every time there is something that we feel like maybe a sensitive student would really react in an emotional or negative way, we make sure that we put a note to the parent. So if you take the time on Sunday to look through the week, read through the notes, and go, I think I'm going to skip that portion of the reading, or I don't think my student's ready for that type of topic. There's ways that you can be prepared to kind of just to skip over it, not to mention it, to mark up the reader, read aloud, so that you maybe put a sticky note over a certain paragraph or pages. So just it's a way that you can get familiar with your week, but also not be surprised by anything, because you know your students better than anyone else, your kids, and you know what's going to either trigger them or be incredibly emotional to them. And while we don't want to sugarcoat education in any way, we do understand that you are the parent and you get to decide what you want to expose your children to at what age. So make sure to pay attention to those notes to the parents. We have spent many of hours making sure that we are sensitive to your needs as parents. It's one thing that you're going to pay attention to on your Sunday night planning. Another thing that you're going to pay attention to is the vocabulary words. There are words that I understand what they mean, especially in the context of what I'm reading, but if you ask me to define them, I'd have a really hard time coming from a concept to actual definition. So not only are those vocabulary words for your students, but they're also for you. I loved being able to go through and make sure that I knew how to pronounce everything, and I love that we can go on YouTube and find pronunciation of words that are not as common, especially words that we know what they are in print, but we wouldn't necessarily say them out loud ourselves. So not that there's anything wrong with struggling in front of your children. I think it's great for our kids to see that we are always constantly learning, that we do not know everything, but it's a great way to familiarize yourself with the vocabulary words. so that you're like, oh yeah, my kid may know that, or oh, I may need to find a different definition for that, or an example of that. We don't expect you to master them or your kids to master them. We're just giving you ample time so that you can introduce your kids to those things, and maybe reintroduce yourself to some of those words. Especially in some of the historical novels that we use, there are words that are just antiquated, that we just don't hear all the time. And so your kids are gonna be like, "What's that?" And you want to make sure you're like, I have no idea." So that's why we do it. Um, and you can ask your kids if they know what it means. And once you get into it, so you'll just have a jumping off point in the vocabulary so that you're not caught off guard. I don't know about you, but I don't like to be caught off guard. I like to be fully prepared. So there's that. All right. Also, a way that you can really help prepare yourself for the week is looking ahead in your math. If you're using all subjects with us, go ahead and look at what's going to be introduced into your math for the week, so that you can answer maybe any questions that your kids might have. Refamiliarize yourself with some of the concepts, because I don't know about you, but it's been a long time since I've had to do even some basic math concepts that we don't use every day. But it's like, yes, of course I remember how to do that. But I had to jog my memory sometimes. So we just want to make sure that you feel fully prepared each week as you go into your homeschool week. Maybe gather some supplies. So if you are doing our science, we always give you a heads up for the following week's science experiments. If it's a household item, maybe you don't keep red cabbage on hand. You want to make sure that you put that on your shopping list so that you have that. It's just really good to have a plan going into your next week. And that is what we talk about for when I'm referring to the Sunday night planning session. Another thing that is super helpful is if you know a certain topic's going to come up and it coordinates with the field trip you want to take, or maybe a YouTube videos you want to find because it really excites you, or it's going to excite your kids, and you want to go ahead and have that all together. Because I guarantee if you stop in the middle of it and try and find those videos, you're going to go down a rabbit trail, you're going to lose time, you're going to lose focus, and a very good thing can turn into a very distracting thing. So that's just FYI. It's happened to me. It has, I know. It shouldn't, but it has. And then finally, in your language arts, if you're planning ahead, you can kind of get a good idea of what that day 4 creative expression is going to be, so that you're helping prepare your student on days 1, 2, and 3 for that writing session on day 4. All right, enough about planning. If you guys have more questions, I'd love to hear them. Finally, your attic box. If you remembered to save the BookShark box that your curriculum came in, you can use that. You can certainly buy those foldable white topped handled boxes, file boxes. Want to let your kids decorate them. They are going to be what you're going to place your student binder, your working binder, and your big file binder in at the end of the year. That's like your end of the year place. That's where you're going to maybe keep any of their art projects, any of their science projects. It is a great place to store your instructor's guide if you plan to use them for a different child in the coming years. But your attic box is just kind of your end of the year. Now, depending on how many students you have and how many years you end up with BookShark, you may have to scale that down as the years go on. If you have been following me at all, we graduated our 2 oldest this year from high school. And so in the midst of a cross-country move, I had to kind of get rid of the stuff that maybe we didn't need to keep every scrap of paper. It is true that my husband does call me a hoarder, but I want to remember those things, but I know that I can't keep it all. So your attic box is a good place for the whole year. Put all those things in, and then if you have to downsize, you can do that later on. But each of those years are organized in your attic box. So that is another way to stay organized throughout the year. You guys have gone incredibly long this session, and I apologize. I hope it's been helpful. Your homework for this week is, I would love to know what one task of the file binder, the working binder, the student binder, the Sunday planning, the attic box, what are you going to implement to stay organized? Do you have a better tip for us? That what are you going to do? What from the suggestions that I've given you are you going to use, or you can also post something that you have found that you think is going to be a better fit for you and your family. So I will get that posted up. I'd love to hear what you guys are going to do, and then maybe give us a pic of your decorated binder, student binder, or your attic box so that we can kind of see what everybody is up to this coming week. All right. So that's your homework. I will get everything up on the site so that you can post your homework and you can post your questions from this session. I am super excited. You guys, we are getting to the beginning. September is when we are going to begin. I'd really encourage you guys to answer that poll. Let me know when everybody's starting. I'd love to hear, what the general consensus is for starting your homeschool year. Until next time, which will be Monday, you guys have a great week, have a great weekend, and make sure that you let me know if you have any questions before then. Have a great day. Bye-bye.